For this tutorial, you'll need your selected yarn. I recommend that you use a chunky or extra chunky weight yarn just to get the best result from this particular stitch. I'm using Stylecraft Special XL. I'll leave a link in the description box below. For my particular yarn, I'm using a 10mm crochet hook. You will need a pair of scissors to tie off your ends and some large darning needles to sew in your ends at the very end of your project. Okay, so to begin with, you want to start off by making your slip knot, and you can do this whichever way you prefer. And then you want to start off by chaining your initial length. Now you want to do it to whatever width you want your project to be. I'm going to do 15 just as a sample piece, and that would make an ideal width for a scarf as well. So you want to yarn over and pull through, and just keep doing that until you get to the desired length that you want. So pause the video, work your length of your chain, and meet me back in just a moment. So I've now chained my 15 chains, and what I'm going to do is just add an extra 2 onto that chain. 1, 2. So whatever length you've done, add an extra 2 because I want to keep my multiples of the chain at 15. We're now going to crochet into the 4th chain from the hook, so not the one on the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we are actually going to crochet into the base of the chain, or the bottom loop of the chain, rather than the top loop. So if you go into the top loop, it looks like you just have one loop on the hook. If you go into the bottom, you actually look like you have 2, and that creates that V on your hook. And we're going to be working the half treble crochet. That's a UK term. In the US, this is known as half double. So you want to yarn over and then insert your hook into that base of that loop, grab the yarn and pull through, and you'll have 3 loops on the hook, and then you're just going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on that hook. So now we have this section here and then this first stitch. This chain 3 here is going to class as one of our stitches. So that's 2 stitches that we have, and then you would just go into the next chain doing exactly the same thing. So yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over, pull through all the 3 loops on the hook. And you're just going to do that all the way along that chain, and you should end up with the amount that you originally desired. So I'll end up with 15 stitches. 14 of them will be actual stitches, and the last one will be here. So pause the video, work your way along that base chain, and meet me back in just a moment. So I've now finished my first row, so this is acting as our foundation. And now once you've done your foundation, this stitch is actually just a 2-row repeat, so it's actually really easy and really effective to do. So we want to start off by chaining 2 and turning our work. Now from now on, this chain 2 will not class as a stitch in our work, it's just going to create the edge of our work. Now when we're working back this way, we're actually going to want to force some of these stitches outwards so that we create a ridge in our work, and we're actually going to push these ones back because we're actually looking at the back of the work here. So what we want to do is ignore where we would normally work into. So we would normally work into the top of the stitch just here, and it looks like V's on the top of the work. We're actually going to work into this loop just here. So as it's facing us, it's the front loop. So just in there. And as you look at the work, it's almost like a diagonal stitch all the way across. So we want to do the same stitch. So it's yarn over. You're going to insert your hook into that front loop as you're looking at it. Grab the yarn and pull it through. You'll have 3 loops on the hook, and then grab the yarn and pull it through all 3 loops on the hook. So that's our first half treble. We then move into the next one. So into that front loop, 3 loops on the hook, and then pull through, and then we'll work into the next one. like so. If I just flip the work over, you just see it's starting to push out those stitches just there. So pause the video, work your way along to the end. I'll come back and meet you on this very last stitch just to show you what to do there, but making sure that you are working into that front loop of the stitch rather than into the top of the stitch. Okay, so now as I've come to the end of my row, I've just done 14 stitches, remembering that this first chain 2 did not class as a stitch, and we're left just here. Now what you want to do in this section, just because it's the very end, you want to insert your hook towards the end and make sure that you are catching 2 loops, and this just makes it a little bit more secure. So grab the yarn and do your stitch as normal. So that is our first row of our 2-row repeat. We then want to chain 2, 1 and 2, and turn our work. So now that you can see this ridge is coming out nicely here. Now what we want to do is push these loops out, and if we went into the front of the stitch here, it would actually push it out towards the back. So what we want to do in this row is work into the back loop of our chain. So if you turn it on its side, you can see these V's across the top. We want to work into the back loop here. So we're not including this stitch that we've just done, this chain 2, and we are going to do our half treble crochet into that back loop all the way along. So again, if you want to pause the video and continue doing your half trebles into the back loop along this row, and I shall meet you back at the very end and show you how to do the last stitch. I'm now at the end of this row. I've done 14 stitches, so I'm just doing my last stitch just here. Now at this point you've got the option of either working into the back loop as you have been, but what I like to do is just catch both of the loops on the top, again just to make sure that it's giving it a bit of a sturdy edge, and then do my stitch just like that. And then what you would do is you would just chain 2 and then start again as you did before. So you're going to be working into the front loop of this stitch in order to push out the work that way. So if you want to rewind the video and watch the instructions of the very first row of the 2-row repeat, and then continue to do that until you get to the length that you want. I'm going to pause the video now and continue adding a few more rows just so you can see what it's looking like as you're building. But just remember that when you do your chain 2s from each row, they aren't actually counting as your stitches, and this will keep your edges really nice and smooth looking. So here is what it's starting to look like with a few more rows. You can see that it's creating a really beautiful stitch. So as you can see that as we build, the ridges are going horizontally to as you're working. So if you wanted a scarf which actually had the lines running vertically, then you would just do a really long chain to begin with, and that would make the ridges run this way. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, make sure you give me a thumbs up, subscribe to keep up to date with any of my latest videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you again next time. Bye!